Hello again, and welcome to Football Manager Roleplay, a project where we create a player using the FM pregame editor, give him a potential ability of 200, and see if he will become the greatest American footballer ever. We will simply watch the progression of this player, Henry Marshall, from the age of 15 to hopefully his eventual retirement. This is a world-building exercise where Football Manager provides the events, and we build a story around those events. Let's take a look at Henry Marshall's current slide up here on the screen. As you can see, he has now moved up to 133 in current rating, plus 1 from the previous episode. We are now in the off season of June 2026. Henry didn't make the U.S. national team, which is getting ready for the World Cup. He's getting ready to return to Liverpool after his loan runs out on June 30th. But there will be a new manager there as Jurgen Klopp was fired at the end of the season. Will Henry stay with the youth teams in Liverpool, or will he be loaned out again? Let's move forward. All right, we have now moved all the way up to June 25th, 2026, and our summary is going to focus on three areas: what's going on in Henry's life, what's going on at Liverpool, and what's going on with the U.S. national team. The big news, front page news in the sports page, certainly, is that John Henry, the owner of Liverpool, is now willing to step aside. Lots of speculation as to why. Some internet theories. One, Henry had no stomach for a rebuild now that Klopp had been sacked. He's going to let someone else do the work there. Two, rumor had it that privately he found Liverpool's fans as quote unquote unappeasable, end quote, and decided that there were easier ways to make a profit. And number three, the third theory, he was 76 years old and he wanted to pull away from sports and enter retirement. So it looks like change in Liverpool will go all the way to the top in 2026. Meanwhile, Kenny Pierman called Henry Marshall out of the blue while Marshall was in Shreveport. He said, before we have to go back to Liverpool, he said, let's go to Las Vegas. Now, Marshall had never been to Vegas before, and he was about to take him up on the trip when his older sister Maggie intervened. He said, what? You can't drink in Vegas, she said. You told me about this guy before, and he's the kind of guy that's going to want to party. I had a friend go to Vegas, and she got into all kinds of trouble there with fake IDs. It's like they ban you from the casinos if you try to use one. They couldn't even get into a hotel. Party in Europe, Henry, and not in Vegas. All right, Henry said, but I gotta get out of Shreveport. This place is killing me. He told Kenny his sister was sick and that he couldn't go, and he'd make up for it at Liverpool. The next day, Henry said goodbye to his family and returned to the UK. He spent his time between his arrival on June 10th and the start of training camp enjoying his new house in Formby. He hadn't really had the chance to live in it as he had been loaned to Sunderland shortly after he purchased it. Now let's go ahead and look and see what happens at Liverpool. Bennett and Sunderland, a contract stalemate going on there. The typical signing of deals are filling the threads. Liverpool in takeover talks. And the favorite for the job may be Lewis Scott. And we'll see what happens there as we start rolling forward. And yes, that's it. Lewis Scott has successfully completed his takeover of Liverpool. Now, who is Lewis Scott? As a 53-year-old Lewis Scott from Cheshire owns a chain of restaurants and pubs in the UK. The Scott's been a fan of the club for years, and he's known by everyone to be a visionary leader, but a bit difficult on the managerial side. He's a high-charging perfectionist. He had a major cocaine addiction that ended up with him in rehab by age 38, and it almost resulted in the loss of his businesses. And the Liverpool press had a field day about snorting Scott, even though his drug days were 15 years behind him. My addiction is now Liverpool FC, Scott said. And he talked about making, quote, the fan experience at Liverpool the best in the world. Meanwhile, with the U.S. national team, the United States men's team would face New Zealand in Group A as their part of the World Cup begins. If we can go ahead and find out what goes on here, yep, there it is. They qualify from Group A with the second round. How do they do that? Can we find out some information here? I'm going to find it. There it is. New Zealand blow qualification chances. They lose 2-0 to the United States. Henry is not a part of this team. He's going to be watching at home. But as you can see, it's a rather decisive victory. The Kiwis were no match for the USA. Sweden had also beaten New Zealand, and they beat New Zealand by a score of 5-1. This win propelled the United States to the round of 32, but their final placement would be determined by the winner of the US-Sweden game. Let's go back to the main screen here. And if we can find out how that turned out, and I'm sure that we will because it briefly flashed by. In the game against Sweden, it turned out that the United States lost that game 2-0. This was a game that the United States should have won. If you look up here, the back-to-back goals from Sweden in the 37th minute and in the 39th minute, they were simply able to find the goal, and the U.S. wasn't. This would set up a match between the USA and Paraguay in the second round of 32 teams. Let's take a look at the end of the first round of the World Cup, the group stage. On the screen, we're going to have groups A through E. None of those placements look very surprising. Now, we'll take a look at groups F through J. Now, note the huge goal differential for France. France is looking for its third straight World Cup. They start out the tournament with an 11-0 thrashing of El Salvador. Also, note Spain in Group J. Mali played Spain to a 1-1 draw. Next, groups K through O. Scotland defeated Brazil 2-1 in their opening game to take the Group K. So Scotland's fans are hoping for big things now. And in Group O, there was a minor upset of Ghana over Uruguay, 1-0. And next coming up, we will have Group P. And I formatted it in this way so as to not have a giant Group P image. So Group P is at the bottom of this image. Japan's 2 losses were very disappointing. Here are the matches for the second round. Argentina versus Mexico looks very interesting. England has to face Brazil and be under pressure to beat them worse than Scotland. On June 20th, Jurgen Klopp found a new coaching job. It was the prime club from his home country, FC Bayern, that was willing to take him in their arms. And now we go to the round of 32 and look for what happens with the US and Paraguay. If there's the draw against Paraguay, you can see that right here. Some speculation in the MLS. And the US just absolutely hammered Paraguay by a score of 3-1. They had no chance as this game was in front of a rabid home club in Philadelphia, looking on, and all these guys are filled with patriotic fervor since the 250th anniversary of the founding of the U.S. is going to be in the following month. The U.S. will move to the third round, and they will face Denmark, who had beaten Serbia 3-2 in extra time. As for Liverpool, it seemed, they were still waiting for the selection of coach. The primary candidate was Theodore Whitmore of America. Julian Nagelsmann of FC Bayern had passed up the Liverpool offer to take over Atletico in Spain. Now, if we can see from BBC Radio Mersey, there it is, all of a sudden claims that Valencia's Marcelino is head of the Spanish club Valencia is due to be named soon. But it was also learned from the Netherlands media that we have Sport Buzzer has a Stuttgart's coach Zvonimir Zoldo, and once again, Netherlands media, Ruud van Nistelrooy is believed to have attended an interview for the vacant Liverpool job. So, this has forced all the bookmakers in the UK to adjust all their odds, and we will now move forward. Welcome back. You will now notice that the screen looks very different. This is because I have now upgraded from FM23 to Football Manager 2024. And since there's no longer any support for the Zealand skin that I like to use, I am trying out the funky Musterman skin. You'll see it right here. The idea behind the Musterman skin is that it favors visual representations of data. It's a brand new era. So let's get started. On June 27th, the rumors in the UK sports press were that Marcelino would be taking over at Liverpool. This is the Valencia coach that we talked about. So let's go on ahead and come back to the World Cup. The results of the second round. Of those 16 games, 7 of them went in extra time. Of those, 4 of those games went into a penalty stage. The most interesting games were Germany holding out over Canada in sudden death and England scraping by Brazil in penalties. The games in yellow, those are upsets, and 3 of the upsets were made by teams from the African continent. And, there is a third round right here. Here's the third round. England versus Italy is going to be high profile there. So let's go. On June 28th, the USA would take on Denmark. And yes, unfortunately, Denmark win in the World Cup third round. And look at this. We have a whole new layout for, top performers, expected goals, expected assists, dribbles, progressive passes. Over here on the USA side, we have it too. We can pull up player statistics like this, our typical list here. And we can also pull up, analytical data. Not enough data right now here to create a visualization, but even so, everything changes in this new Musterman skin. But unfortunately, it doesn't matter what the data looks like. The US comes unstuck. Denmark wins 2-0, and this pretty much ends the US's dream of a World Cup. The Danes scored 2 goals within the first 16 minutes. One was on an error from Munisusa. And I wonder if we can get that kind of, yep, there we go. Here, Scope, Helliand. Yep, it's going to be a little bit hard getting used to kind of these newer kind of representations. We'll see how they turn out. On 29th of June, training camp started at Liverpool, and Liverpool still had no manager. Henry was actually barred from training until the end of his loan with Sunderland on June 30th. At 11 a.m., Liverpool on that day, Liverpool announced their new manager, and the selection shocked everyone. It was an outsider in the odds. Who was it? Zinedine Zidane. Zinedine Zidane has agreed to sign with Liverpool out of Napoli. Now, Zidane only started speaking to Liverpool at the end of the previous week, and the management of the club must have liked what they heard from him. Zidane was a 2-time Champions League winner, and he was considered one of the greatest coaches in the world. Now, one impediment might be that Zidane doesn't really speak English, but as he said through a translator, the language of football is the ball, and we are all fluent. That night, the youth players all got together at a party to watch the Italy-England match, and they wondered about their new manager, taking their minds off the horrid 3-0 defeat of England they were watching. Now, Zinedine was certainly good, but how would it affect them? On July 1st, Henry's time for Sunderland was now up. And the first thing that morning, he was immediately made available for loan. So here are the results of the third round of the World Cup. There are no surprises here for the third round. The only surprise is that France has some trouble with Nigeria in extra time. And Norway brutally destroys Honduras' pretenses here. This is how the quarterfinals will go. France is now the favorite to win the World Cup. And Spain versus Germany is going to be very interesting. Let's see if we can pick up here. That's for news about Mohamed Salah. Some low news. Edwards, team of the week. Liverpool releases Sunderland. Marshall's loan finishes. Here we are. He made 31 appearances during his time at Sunderland. To join Sunderland in the World Cup player analysis. Frank breaks the wins record here. Let's see if we actually have that here. I don't know if we can find Mohamed Salah. It's been a few days because I've spent so much time getting this thing transferred over here. There it is. Salah couldn't miss the start of the season. Shin splints during preseason training. He'll be sidelined for 5 weeks and is rated at best borderline for the opening of the season. But Henry Marshall was told that he would be traveling with the main club, Liverpool, for a couple of preseason friendly matches in China. Henry faced the perpetual uncertainty of knowing where he was going to be playing this season. He was ecstatic about it. It gave him a chance to showcase himself to clubs that might want to pick up his loan. And he left the UK on July the 8th with Declan Rice, who was the new captain of the senior team, and pretty much the entire under-21 team. They would stay in China, and they would return on July 19th. The first game was against Maitsu Haka in a small stadium, and Maitsu were the China second division champions. Henry would always remember a crowd of schoolgirls cheering him the moment he stepped onto the pitch. The interpreter said, "They have taken to you." With his head full of the thoughts of Chinese schoolgirls, Henry Marshall was determined to put on a show for his new admirers, and he was a hurricane force on the pitch. This match was no doubt a comfortable 3-0 win. Henry Marshall, player of the match, 9.0 match rating. He had 3 assists in this game. Let's see if we can find anything. Dribbles, progressive passes. Nope. It doesn't list anybody's rating. Here we are, ratings. Top performers. Let's see. Does it go backwards? Yeah, it does. You can sort things up for top or bottom. Marshall has the best rating with a 9.0. Player stats. That doesn't change. Marshall, 7 crosses, 7 aerials, grabbed everything, set up every single goal. He took command of this game so much that Declan Rice told him to put it back in first gear. I think we have this one sewn up. I mean, Rice didn't even come into the game in the 83rd minute. Clearly they didn't need the big boys for this match. Out of a group of stellar performances, Marshall was the guy who really stood out. And the Chinese press asked acting manager Barry Ludus if Marshall would be playing for the main club. "Well, he's on loan, so we'll see," Ludus said, grinning. "But I'll say one thing, he certainly looked like someone who could start for the senior squad." Now, let's go ahead and get back to the end of the World Cup. And we'll put the slide up. All right, and here what happens here. France ran out of steam in the third place game, and they were dispatched by Norway 2-0. And in the finals, Germany defeated Portugal 3-1 for their 5th World Cup, tying them with Brazil. Now, on Monday, July 15th, Zidane finally received his work permit with the UK. Here we are, Germany winning the World Cup. Let's see, we have some people named here. Mbappe, World Cup best player. He also wins the Golden Boot. Goal of the tournament. That was a game between Serbia and Argentina. Clayson, he wins best goalkeeper. World Cup Dream Team is announced. Zidane, like I said, he finally picks up his work permit on the 15th. He will not be traveling to China. There was just too much to be done with the main club. On the 18th, this ersatz Liverpool team played GZE Power. They are a League One, which is a second division Chinese team that had just been relegated to League Two. This was going to be another 3-0 win. If we can find it here, I'm sure that we will. We have some known crew. Yam moves accepted. Stewart completes Liverpool move. You have friendly, comfortable 3-0 win. So I wonder if we see a picture of Zhuangzhou provincial Spontaneous. We won't see it, and we have, unfortunately, no information about this game. You know, it's funny because it doesn't give you the thing about having no information about the game. You just click it in the skin and nothing happens. So he didn't play in that game. It was okay. He had a great first game. He got to sign hundreds of autographs for Chinese schoolgirls. He got to play in a Liverpool kit. He and Kenny Pierman had a chance at a mini vacation. There would obviously be a limit to what Liverpool's youth kids were going to be allowed to do in China without causing an international incident, but they had some great parties with lots of booze. Henry even managed to get lucky during the party, although frankly speaking, Henry thought the attitudes of the blokes on his team came out of the 18th century or something. He was at least embarrassed about, knowing nothing much about China, but the young footballer mindset of his teammates was that the world, China included, rotated around them. These kids said horrible crap about Chinese women, but then again, they said horrible crap about English women. However, one of the Chinese women at the party was very aggressive with Henry, flirting with him, and she made her intentions plain. The fact that she was good looking didn't hurt. Kenny Pierman whispered that it was an Admiral Akbar situation. So Henry made it plain that he wasn't staying in the country long. And anything that happened would be at his hotel and not some place he didn't know anything about. She didn't care. Did she want to fuck a white guy or an American or somebody he thought was rich or a guy from Liverpool Football Club? Or did she like him for his physique or did she just like him? He never got to that answer. It was wham, bam, thank you, sir. And she was out of there. Back home, or anyway, back in Liverpool, we thought about it some more. Someone once said if you were a footballer, you could have any woman you wanted. Maybe because they wanted you because you were a footballer. The same way that women fell for policemen. They don't love you, they love the uniform. Or in Henry's case, the kit. He was also learning that women were just as interested in sex as men were. He had also learned about fashion. Had seen that the under 21s, most of whom were now coming off a year alone, had developed finer tastes in life. His clothes were rather shabby compared to theirs. He was still just like a normal dude. His mates they were putting on their best. He had to step up his game. Henry didn't know what the season would look like going forward, but as far as he was concerned, it was off to a great start. And that's it for this edition of Football Manager Roleplay. We did a lot. Liverpool has a new manager in Zidane. We moved from FM23 to FM24. The 2026 World Cup concludes, and Henry Markle has a great time in China. Anyway, if you like what you see or hear, please click the like and subscribe buttons. Until next time.